What's going on, everybody? Today is Thursday, January 9th. Back after a long break to talk about part two of the Survivor finale. But we have a winner. Rachel is the winner of
Hmm.
Survivor 47, the 45th winner in the history of the show. It's been a divisive one in the community. I feel like everybody either thinks that she's either a top five winner of all time or shouldn't have even beaten Sam. So we're we're
We'll
gonna
see
get
where I
into all of it.
was gonna say. We'll see where we fall here on that spectrum.
Yeah, the promised Rachel deep dive is coming. I think that's probably what we'll end the episode with. I think, and end quote unquote. We'll probably start it about 10 minutes in, but um, just talk about the finale a little bit by itself. I felt like coming into the finale, like part one of the finale, I was pretty sure Rachel was gonna win. And after part one was done, I was like, if Rachel does win this, I don't know why they broke this up into two. It was the least dramatic thing of all time. It was pretty much just a coronation for Rachel.
Yes.
Uh, I don't think I don't think she really makes a mistake in the second part of the finale. I think she wins that Final Four immunity. There is kind of a discussion in the water where she straight up pretty much just says, "Yeah, Sam and Tina, you guys are making fire."
Hmm.
Um,
I think I said in that moment, the producers probably love that. like,
yeah,
like we can't build any tension literally at all because she just straight up told them. like they
yeah.
usually,
What's
they
Sue gonna do with that nice knife they stuck in the tree branch for her?
they usually draw the entire finale out, that part of the finale out at least with who's gonna be making fire, who's gonna be at final tribal council, and they couldn't do any of that because she just straight up said, "This is what I'm doing. You guys don't have to worry about it."
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so she's not gonna put herself in. Sam, he does the kind of like joking, snarky thing of like, "Oh, you're really gonna let me make fire,"
Hmm.
which that led to another great little teeny
Yeah, she
moment
was
there.
being so annoying.
Um, but yeah, for Rachel, I'm glad somebody said it. She was like, "I won immunity. I won a challenge today to get to the end. I don't know why I need to win another challenge." And she's right. Like when you have that much of a head start,
Hmm.
I I've always thought that the putting yourself in fire move is overrated.
Hmm.
And I really saw no purpose for her. I think really the only time where it's really warranted is if you are clearly in second and the person who was in first is like so far ahead that the only way you can beat them is to eliminate them entirely from the game.
Yeah,
And
I I was
at
gonna
that
say,
point, you
yeah,
have to be the best fire maker, I think,
yeah, yeah,
to then do it.
yeah. I would agree with you. I think the way she framed it is a great spin. Like it's not even a spin. I that's truly how I see it as well, which is how she framed it. But it is a good spin if you don't think that that's necessarily true. That everybody has to win a challenge to make it to final tribal. Besides one person who's not going to win the game anyway because they're being brought to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I won my challenge already. Now you guys, everybody else has to. I don't need to go up 2-0 on everyone.
Yeah.
like I won mine. And I think that's a really great. I think that's an impactful argument on the jury. At least it'd be impactful to me to make if I was sitting there picking a winner. Like that's a really good way to look at it. Um, and you're right. I think also putting yourself into fire if I was on the jury is an admittance of defeat in that like if you truly think you played the better game, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So you must know in your heart that you didn't play the better game. So you need to do that. So you're not going to get my vote unless you
Yeah.
take that person out,
Right.
It has
Yeah,
to be
and
that scenario.
I think that I like the using the impactful in front of the jury
Hmm.
because just to jump ahead a little bit, um, I think the biggest pro about Rachel is her social game and not just her being well liked by people and that opening up strategic avenues. I think that there's a way that she interacts with people where yes, she is likable. It is a way to to get people's respect. I think they're more likely to respect you if they just like you. But I think that some of her interactions with other people, she'll make a point like what you said about like being like an impactful thing to say in front of the jury. She'll just like once a conversation, she'll drop something like that, and you're just like, she knows what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even if she doesn't, even if there's times where I thought Sam made some good points in that final tribal about Rachel trying to make a point, and he kind of gave her a like, well, actually, that's not as big of a deal as you think because of XYZ. But I think that just people interacting with her, like she always knew what was up. You always kind of got the feeling that she knew which way the wind was blowing.
Yeah, I would probably liken it to like a political race almost, where like is either one the best one to win? Like out of anyone? No,
Yeah.
probably not. Like, but they're the two that are left, and like, which one do you like more? Sort of thing. And like, it is usually the person just like who has their finger on the pulse, right? Of what's happening. And I would definitely argue that Rachel had her finger on the pulse of the game more than Sam.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could look at it that way, I suppose, as well.
Yeah. The other thing about this portion of the finale is Sam really sucks at making fire.
Yeah.
He was so bad. Astonishingly bad.
Astonishingly bad.
Sue was watching him at one point, and I loved her confessional where she's just like, yeah, I could definitely beat him. I would think I would have liked that from Sue. Being like, you know what, Rachel? Give me the fucking ball. If we want to get Sam out of here, I can easily beat this guy. You don't have to risk yourself. I would have done it.
It was a good fire making challenge. I mean, take their skills at it. Like it was what's the word? It was like it was good TV. It was dramatic is the word I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the best people making fire of all time, but you can't have like a 10-second finish every time. So I don't know. I thought it was entertaining.
Yeah, I thought it looked like Teeny was going to easily win. I think this was maybe the best fire making challenge of the forced fire making.
Mm-hmm.
If you take away stakes, because I think like Tony and Sarah, right? Whoever won was going to win the game.
Like in a vacuum.
Right. Chris and Rick Devens, whoever won it was going to win the game. Like there's been a couple like that where there's just built-in tension that way. But my headphone, Jesus.
You're a mess.
I know. But yeah, Teeny, she like beats Sam. She makes a fire. It's licking the rope, and there's like a couple breezes come where it just like right before it really starts to catch, the breeze comes and it knocks it away. Then it kind of resettles, and it's kind of dancing around the rope. Sam, he's slowly catching up, but hers is continuing to grow, and she kind of gets to the doorstep for a second time, and then a big gust of wind comes, and her fire at one point is like twice as big as it needs to be, but it's growing like outward. And
It's heating up Sam's rope.
Right. And I don't know if like it seems like Sam built in a more advantageous spot. I doubt that it was on purpose, but like
Don't they draw for their spots?
no,
you're
I
talking
mean
about
like
left or right in the
spot
thing.
on his
Yeah.
platform.
Gotcha,
Because
gotcha.
Teeny kind of built right underneath it,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was going. She was building straight up, and then as the wind blew it away.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Sam, it looked like he was a little closer to himself, and the wind almost blew it into the rope.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that was a conscious effort. He might
No.
have also been shielded by Teeny a little bit from the
Yeah.
wind.
And I mean, that's just random. Like, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that in other ways. You can anticipate that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it is a good. I think Teeny had a good story arc. Like, it was a good ending. If you're looking at it, like, not as people, which we should look at it as people, but if you're looking at it as a narrative, I think she had one of the better arcs of the season, just for storytelling purposes.
Yeah, I really liked her little mini exit interview with Jeff that he makes everybody do right after their dreams get crushed.
Hmm.
And yeah, she was self aware enough to kind of say, like, yeah, this behavior I've had over these last couple rounds, like how I've acted towards Sam, I was basically lashing out. And, you know, I thought it was pretty big of her to be able to have that kind of self reflection and also to be willing to share that and kind of articulate it as well as she did. And yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun to dunk on her the last
Hmm.
couple weeks
Yeah,
because
for
she
sure.
was being fucking annoying. But yeah, like at the end of the day, I respect it, and I thought I agree. I felt like it was a good kind of close of the book on her story.
Because I mean, especially, I mean, you get a little pizza and champagne in you, and you
Yeah,
feel a lot better after not eating for a month.
right.
But I
She got
feel
a
like
meal, then the pizza and champagne.
that's true. True. Um, I feel as though if she would have just been taken to the end, that she would have just pittered out and not. She probably would have been. I mean, she was a finalist, so she wouldn't have been lost, but lost in the annals of Survivor history at some point. Of
Hmm.
like, she didn't win. She didn't really get asked any questions at Final Tribal. Like she's whatever. But I don't know. I feel like this is was a fire making for the ages for at least the new era, and um I don't I feel like it helped strengthen her as a player in Survivor history.
Yeah, and I feel like I feel like actually her losing here versus if she went to the end and got 0 or 1 votes. I feel like, oh my God, Mart.
He's sitting. He loves to sit right with his back up against my chair and lick the shit out of himself anytime I'm recording anything.
um, Lost my train of thought again.
How can I blame you? You say
But
she went to the finale and she got
yeah, yeah,
zero or
yeah.
one votes. Yeah.
Other than the fact that you get 100 grand for coming in second, I think the experience as a whole for her, and I think you get 75 or 50 for third, but I think the experience as a whole for her was probably better actually in coming in fourth because, like you said, she probably goes to the end, and I mean Sue like didn't get a vote. She didn't really get asked any questions. Like she probably had a bad time during the final tribal council, and I think something similar could have happened to Teeny, but if you flip it, like she was becoming not a villain, but just generally disliked by the fans over the
Mhm.
last month or so. Well, last month of the season. Not we're recording this a little later, but yeah, and things were trending downward towards her Survivor experience as a whole, and I feel like now she had that storyline, and she was able to say like I was wrong, or like not necessarily wrong, but like I was acting emotionally, and kind of have a mature takeaway on it, I guess. And yeah, she went out, but she had a really big moment and a memorable one at that too. Like her yelling no when the breeze comes, like it was funny, but I felt so bad because like imagine you're crushing the challenge and
Mhm.
then just a fucking gust of wind comes and you lose because of that. Like that is, I would have been,
Heartbreaking.
yeah. I'd like to think that I wouldn't I would just be sad. I wouldn't really throw a fit from getting out. If that
Yeah.
happened to me, I would freak out.
I'm pissed.
Yeah, I would have loved to see that happen to Liz. See
Oh
her
yeah.
reaction to that.
I do feel though like usually the player who comes in third, if they get 0 or 1 votes, the edit for them a lot of the time is yeah, they didn't win, but they had some sort of personal growth and
Hmm.
personal journey out there that was more distinct than everyone else's personal journey. I feel like that's an edit that I've picked up on for third place finalists, where like it's like a consolation prize, and they need to like frame it in a way of like this person doesn't suck, even though no one voted for them to win the game. Like they're coming out of here,
Yeah.
debatably
It's the
debatably
Owen Knight
better.
Memorial Edit.
Yeah, yeah. And Sue, you could frame Sue that way as well as Teeny, and I feel like they were the two battling for third for a while. So
uh, yeah, but Teeny overall, a good ending for her. I thought she was a solid character because she, elicited emotion out of the fan base
mhm.
for probably more than anybody, I think. Um, all right, let's talk.
Rome, maybe Rome.
Yeah, that's it. Fuck. Fair, fair. Um, and Kishan too. I feel like
Yeah,
Kishan. He was on the screen. I don't know if there's ever been more posthumous content for somebody than Kishan.
Kashan.
Yeah, I actually felt like that was a thing when I used to be like a lot more into Big Brother. Was I always thought that that was a big positive of Big Brother compared to Survivor was that Big Brother always they always did callbacks to people that were voted out, and you kind of saw it was like a more cohesive like how we got to this point kind of thing,
Mhm.
and it's because it's happening on the fly and it's not edited, so they're like, hey, this thing is becoming important. Let's keep reminding you about it, right? But yeah, Survivor is pretty much when you're gone, you're gone. But not Kashan. He
I do
was,
that as a dungeon master
yeah,
in D&D.
exactly.
Like, hey, you remember this thing that I brought up a month ago? You probably don't, but here's
Yeah.
another thing that relates to that.
Yeah, that's how bad we suck at playing is you gotta keep reminding
No,
us.
no, it's not. It's not you guys.
I was hammering notes. I was muting myself a lot because I was just typing away
Good.
last time. Um, but yeah, Sue. We kind of just touched on her. I think honestly, she just played an outdated game. Like I
Yeah.
appreciate that she was fiercely loyal, but I think it was maybe loyal to a fault.
Oh,
Where
season 2
right,
winner. So
yeah, yeah. Where I don't think she really didn't have any big relationships outside of her original tribe until Rachel when once Caroline goes. It was pretty much she loved Gabe and Caroline and she hated Kyle, and that was pretty much it. Um, and I think even if you value loyalty, she she just didn't do much overall. She didn't make mistakes, but she mostly just floated. And yeah, I mean Sue was there. I mean credit for making it all the way to the end because I think it's you know 80 or
it's a
90,
feat.
90 however many percent of people who have ever played have been voted out. So
Mm-hmm.
she made it to the end. That is the ultimate goal besides getting the votes. So props.
Rats and snakes, she wins.
Yeah. 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 What would Sue's animal be on the island? What's something a raccoon maybe?
She's low. She's a dog.
Yeah, but her face is always dirty. That's what
That's
I'm trying
true.
to think. But yeah, our second place person, Sam. This final tribal council got pretty interesting. I still always thought that Rachel was gonna win, but Sam did put up a really good fight. I think we found out that his superpower is getting the last word in because he always had something to say to everything Rachel said. And
Yeah,
I think there were a few times she just didn't want to argue, but there was a lot of times where he like made a point and she just said okay, and like there just wasn't a ton of fight out of her.
I think this. So yeah, I agree. I think he walked her at Final Tribal, to be honest. Like to the point where I thought too. I was like, "Shit, does Sam win this?" And I think that it goes back to the point I was making earlier, where she just has a better finger on the pulse of the jury and the game. She knows, probably knew. I don't know. I'm speculating here. She probably knew that a lot of people felt that Sam was overbearing with his opinions and with how he approached situations. She probably noticed that in real time that like, hey, he's doing that thing that he does that no one likes, and even though he
Just
might
gonna
be
let him
right,
do it.
yeah, even though he might be right, like if I argue with him, like it gets messier, like it's more in the weeds, in the mud, and if I just say, okay, like I probably am not gonna win any votes, but he's not gonna win anybody either. It's just gonna it's just gonna stay stagnant because
Right.
people didn't like him for that are not gonna change their mind.
Yeah,
So
I
I don't
thought
know.
I thought that people probably came in wanting to vote for Rachel, and I think Sam probably elicited some thought out of a couple people, but ultimately, like when they at the beginning of the reunion, when Jeff kind of gave Sam some props for like yeah like pretty good performance. Like people they were kind of like yeah like good job, but I feel like that's where some jurors in the past would interject and be like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know what to do. Like there wasn't really any of that. I felt like there was a couple swing or people that I thought could be swing votes or potential votes for Sam, even if he did lose. Um, that I think I maybe would have expected them to pipe up at that moment. But yeah, it felt like despite whatever performance he did, you know, it didn't really win people over. I do think that was a good point by you, where it's what people didn't like about him, and it looks like he's not letting Rachel argue her game. Right? It seems like every time that she tries to make a point, he's just trying to control the situation, and like you said, that's what people didn't like about him, about his personality.
Yeah. How often do you think people have their mind changed at Final Tribal?
I don't think it's very often.
I
I
don't think
think
so either.
I think there's a lot of people who will say that they came in thinking something, and then partway through they were like, okay, my vote is up in the air now. But then they end up voting for the same person they started with. I just think that if you're thinking of like more people are coming or gaining information, I think if you're thinking about it for like a week or more, then yeah, they could be a little more convincing. But I think the final tribal council does more to hammer home what you already thought about people than it really does to change their opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why, like, I thought Andy played a pretty good game, but I thought that was always going to be the one issue for him if he did make it to the end. Was it seemed like people didn't quite get his game, and
It's not the
you got to
smartest cast of all time.
yeah, and you really gotta like turn a lot of people in a short amount of time, and you just basically have to be very correct in your strategy and have people
You have to be the
um
viewer. I mean, you have to have all the
right.
information. And like, I mean, depending on how people share the information and who is on the jury and what conversations they're involved in, like you could piece that together. But I have to really go back and think if like they could piece it together as a unit of the jury, like
Right.
based on their shared experiences. I don't know. I mean, I
Yeah.
mean, do you think do you think people change their vote like once every other season, once a season, one jury member season, once every other season,
I bet there's
somewhere in between?
I'd say a touch under 20% change their vote. I'd say there's
Oh
maybe
wow, one or two a season.
yeah, that's what I would
I was
say.
even thinking less. I was thinking, like if you have one a season, that's like 12% basically.
Yeah. Yeah, cuz I just think yeah, jury's about yeah, I think one a season's probably closer. I think yeah, with like an 8 or so person jury, I'd say one, sometimes two would
Yeah, okay.
probably change their mind. Yeah. Which yeah, that'd be less than 20, um but yeah, ultimately Rachel wins. So we said last episode we're gonna go through her entire game. And like I said already, this was a pretty divisive win in the community. I think even more than like Gabler, because Gabler, everyone was pretty much like, well, that's fucked. There's no debate, right? This one, there's two really passionate sides to this argument, and because of that, I will reiterate, I came into the finale, especially part two, thinking that Rachel was going to win. And before kind of went through all the details here, my opinion was that she deserved to win this season. I think I would have voted for her at the final three. Um, However, I thought it was probably an average to below average winning game, I would say.
Yeah,
And
before you go through all of this, I'll say I also would have voted for Rachel before we go through anything. This is my pre before your notes
mhm,
take. I also would have voted for her. I think that it would have been close in my head though. like I wouldn't have been like this is definitely like 100% my opinion. Um, I don't think I think I would it would be difficult for them to sway me at Final Tribal. Anyone, not just this season, just in
Hmm.
general. Just because I always think I'm right, so like someone else telling me why they think I'm wrong is doesn't work a lot.
Yeah.
But and what was the second part of what you were saying there?
Oh, I was,
Of your opinion?
yeah, I was just saying I thought she was probably an average to below
Ah,
average winner.
right. I so we had 45 winners. Bottom third, I probably would have had her.
Yeah, like
Like
top of that
yeah,
area.
like around 40 or 30 30 to
That's
35 somewhere there.
Yeah, somewhere. I think so as well. Because like my thing with evaluating winners, as you guys know, is how much did you control the game, right? Imposing your will on the game is a phrase that I use a lot, and it just
Mm,
essentially, for better or for worse, were the decisions you made the decisions that decided the course of the game, right? So my thought was that she controlled less action than the average winner, but out of this group, she deserved to win. That's my starting point in this.
cool.
So, all right, let's start with the pre-merge. So, pre-merge doesn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things. I will say we aren't going to talk a ton of Sam because it's Rachel's win. It's a deep dive into her game. However, they were on the same tribe every day of the season. So, and they really were the final two of consequence. So, we might check in on them periodically. Um, Maybe. We'll see. I don't know. But I think she starts out strong in the pre-merge, right? She instantly forms the early dominant alliance, right? As the three girls and Sam. Um, as far as John goes, I don't know that she gets much credit. I don't know if anybody really gets much credit. I think it was kind of a group decision. She does vote correctly, obviously. But yeah, it was pretty much Andy seems like he's crashing out, but if Andy and John are on the outside, who does it really make more sense to get rid of? And I think they just, as a group, kind of all were like, yeah, John's probably a better player, which ended up being ironic. But um, the other aspect of the pre-merge is obviously the Annika tribal is really bad for her
Hmm.
because, unbeknownst to her, Andy kind of becomes Sam's like reclamation project, and Sam and Sierra are dating. So they decide Annika is going to uh, she's doing too much, and she's kind of butting heads with Sam a little bit. Um, and they just decide they've had enough. And Rachel incorrectly votes for Andy. Um, I don't put a ton of blame on Rachel. I don't think because like this was a mix of Annika doing it to herself and just the fact that she was butting heads with Sam, and like also Sam having the forethought to bring Andy in and try to use Andy. Like I think if Rachel was playing poorly here, they would say, okay, we're going to save Andy. Which of Annika and Rachel are we going to get rid of? Rachel was never really in the conversation to get voted out. It was more just, oh, Annika, we got to get rid of Annika. So I think it was more negative play by Annika than anything negative Rachel did. Um, Something like that said, she still loses an ally because she doesn't see it coming. And it's an okay pre-merge overall. It's mainly good, but one major problem
Yeah, I
is
would
what
say
I would say.
she was in the majority until I mean, who can predict Andy? You know, like
Nobody.
I mean, at that point, everyone, including the viewers, thought he was a lame duck. Like he was
Yep.
just sitting there waiting to be voted out. Like I don't put fault on anyone for not anticipating him making him and Sam making moves like that.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, a little bit of a rocky start, but nothing terrible. Um, in the post merge, so let's start with the Rome vote. She correctly votes in the Rome vote. Um, I don't think she or really anybody should get credit for getting Rome out. I think if anybody does, it's Soul. Um, Maybe Genevieve and Teeny for letting it happen, but I guess Kyle pushes pretty hard for this as well. But ultimately, Rome going is not a positive or a negative for her. In my opinion, it's not a positive or negative for a lot of people. It's pretty much it's a positive for Kyle and Soul, and it's arguably a negative for Genevieve, but probably not. Um, it's pretty much nothing.
Mhm.
I would say I'm neutral on
I would agree.
Rome's impact. Let's move to Tiana. I got a lot of notes for this one. So this was the split 6-6 tribal council.
She's gone here if she's not saved.
Right. So it's her. She's in the losing six with literally the 5 members of the blue tribe. And obviously she's going to leave this tribal council without voting. So there's a lot of angles here. So I'm going to present all sides. So let's start with, I'll be nice, we'll finish with the positives. We'll start with the negatives. So Soul's advantage. He finds it at the reward, and he can't keep it for himself. She literally hasn't done anything to get the advantage from him. And it's really just he would fracture the blues by playing this. So she is completely saved by the safety without power, even though she didn't do anything to earn that power. And without that advantage, or if it's found by somebody else, or if he decides not to play it, she is a pre-juror, like you said. I think the other big negative that nobody really talks about is the inability to swing anything. I think when an original tribe stays together or mostly together, at the merge, there's usually a lot of unresolved issues that people are chomping at the bit to resolve, which a lot of times ends up with, like, a lot of these 3-tribe seasons, there's a tribe that comes in with more people, or sometimes 2 tribes that come in with a lot more than a bottom feeding tribe, but they want to vote each other out immediately. And I think she's hurt by Kyle winning the immunity, because I think if he doesn't win the immunity, I do think Sue would take this opportunity to really push to get Kyle out. But ultimately, this is a group with a lot of unresolved issues, and she can't find a crack. She's not able to just use her gameplay in order to save herself.
Mm-hmm.
Which, that leads me to a positive, which is she was totally twist screwed.
Mm-hmm.
For as much as she should have went home, she also did not deserve to be in this situation. She didn't do anything to deserve to be on the chopping block in this episode. And I think the other positive is she tried to parlay this relationship with Soul from getting the advantage from him. So it ultimately goes nowhere, but I think she had the right idea there. So, or go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, did you have any more points to make?
No.
Okay. Overall, I'm net neutral on this vote for her, because I think that both fortunate and unfortunate options just cancel each other out. Like, she's right place, right time for the advantage to be given to her, and she was wrong place, wrong time to be put on that tribe to begin with. So, they just cancel out, and, like, okay, it's net neutral. And yeah, she didn't swing anybody, but she did gain an ally in Saul. So everything cancels out, and it's just, I think, another net neutral vote for her, which is pretty par for the course for her, I think, to be honest. It's just like she never did anything.
Right. Yes. So I would pretty much agree with that summary of it. I think it's neutral, positives in, positives out, negatives in, negatives out. Sierra. This is, on the surface, I think this is one of Rachel's better moves, where herself, Sam, and Sierra are on the bottom. Everyone is splitting votes on Sierra and Sam, but she does not know that. So she plays her shot in the dark in order to read the room. When she stands up to play it, she wants to see if people are surprised and being like, oh shit, like this could be an issue. And by the way, she found her immunity idol this episode. But yeah, she scans the room and she correctly asserts that, okay, I'm not getting votes. I'm going to hang on to my immunity. That by itself is a brilliant, subtle move. I think it's a move that perfectly encapsulates Rachel's style of play. And I think it's why she's a good player, because she's able to make something out of a relatively nothing game mechanic. That said, I think it also encapsulates Rachel's game, because nothing like she does a good thing to get more information, and the conclusion is like nothing really. It's like, okay, like I'm not getting voted out tonight, I guess. Like there wasn't this big, like I think real instincts would have been if she was getting votes, being able to suss that out. I think that would have been very impressive.
I agree. I think positives and negatives again end up in net neutral area because it wasn't she went into this vote not being a part of the true plan. She also, you know, she also doesn't have didn't have the social chops or the strategic chops in this particular voting cycle to be able to figure that out on her own that she wasn't getting voted out or that she was getting voted out. She had to use one of the advantages provided to her using her resources to make that decision and ultimately ends up without it for nothing because she wasn't getting voted out. I think that's net negative for her not to be able to figure that out without expending her resources on it. However, I think it is ingenious that she could make that she I think it's an ingenious plan. I think in pragmatically it doesn't do much for her, but I think it's a really good idea, so I'm going to give her some praise for that. So I think
Yeah.
it's net neutral again.
It's essentially, yeah, it's high level thinking, but
Yeah.
it's just not required, really.
Right.
Is
Yeah, yeah.
which is kind of that's Rachel's game, where it's like, yeah, she's smart, she's a good player, but like, where's the evidence? But
Right.
there's subtle evidence, but
Because like
yeah,
Sam could make the argument here that like she if she made the argument Final Tribal, yeah, like I was trying to see if anyone was going to vote for me, and like everyone's like, oh, that's a great. But Sam could just say, well, yeah, like I just executed the plan. She had nothing to do with it. You're like, she wasn't in on it. Like you can't praise her in this moment for something that like she didn't have information on. You know what I mean?
yeah. And she also doesn't mention this in Final Tribal, which is
I know.
crazy because
Yeah.
it's a great thing. I do have one issue with this that, and I found this in a couple different voting cycles. I think I have 3 examples of this total where it's a thing that I think is a big problem that nobody on either side really talks about. I think it's great fuel for the anti-Rachel people that none of them bring up, and I think it's really a thing that the pro-Rachels don't even realize happened, which is why is she lumped in with Sam and Sierra on the bottom to begin with in
Mm-hmm.
this? Because these two just orchestrated you're going from the majority to completely on the bottom on your own of your original tribe. She has a golden opportunity with the merge be the very next day. She's able to, make herself available to others, and instead she clings to Sam and Sierra, and I really don't know why. I don't even think there's upside. I guess if you think Sam and Sierra are going to do a good job of integrating, then you think you're just along for the ride there. But like, I understand that she has like very gradually gains social capital. It's kind of her thing. Um, However, there was no reason to start on the bottom. I think it might be because people were just kind of staying true to their original tribes at this point, but still, I think if you go to a group and say, I'm on the bottom of my original group, I would like to join your group, they would take you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if everyone's like, yeah, we're staying blue strong, red strong, yellow. Like if you've got no one has a majority, right? It's you're fighting for even a plurality at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go up to the Lavos, right, and you're like, hey, I'm really getting along with you guys, and honestly, my group just turned on me, and I'm kind of a free agent. Genevieve would say, welcome, Rachel. I will not target you like I do the entire rest of the game. So overall, I think it's a good round for her because I think this is one of her 2 signature moves where it's like that's something that you could point to and say that's Rachel in a nutshell. That's why she's a good player. But still, I think just even being in that situation to begin with, I do think is a little bit of an indictment on her.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that staying with people on your original tribe is puts much more of a target on your back than it does to help you.
Yeah.
Especially in today's today's game. So
Yeah. All right. The soul vote. This is my second thing that I haven't seen anyone really bring up this voting cycle. Um, and I personally think it's one of her worst voting cycles. I think in the two prior, so she's gifted the safety without power by Soul. And then in the previous episode, they appear to create an alliance. Now, Genevieve is going to turn on Soul and target him. She's going to rally up the blues and she's going to target Soul. They had 5 people out of 10. So their 6th was going to be either Andy or Rachel. They were both told about this plan, and seemed like Andy wanted to do it, but he was toying with maybe, just kind of weighing the options. But it seemed like he was ultimately going to do it. But they still invite Rachel to make this move as well. So Rachel just made an alliance with Soul. He's getting targeted, and they need her vote. And she decides she's just going to go along with this plan anyway, which I think is the wrong decision. Only for her to tell the plan to Sam, and then he blows it up. So it's a bad plan to begin with, and she still can't even carry it out. It's someone else is going to destroy her plan. So it's okay, it's an inability to execute this, right? But it's maybe going to accidentally be a good thing because she probably shouldn't have wanted him to go home anyway. All this just for it to be a live tribal council and Soul goes home anyway. So I think the only justification I can make for this for her is I think this is right around where she starts working pretty closely with Caroline. And I wonder if that kind of trumped her budding relationship with Soul. I think, like, on the surface, though, she votes out a promising alliance partner as the swing vote. And I think Gabe was the other target at this point, or maybe Sue. And yeah, that might have been the reason, is Caroline, she's with Caroline, Sue's with Caroline, she doesn't want to cut Sue, I guess.
but she tells Sam.
Right.
And if that was true, if her intent was mastermind, oh, like, please don't tell anyone, like, I feel like I have to tell you, type of thing, and she's over in a confessional, like tapping her fingers together, like she's evil, saying like, oh, I totally duped Sam there because I did want him to go and spill the beans and make it a live tribal. You know what I mean? Like we would have seen a confessional of that. Like, if the producers would have coaxed that out of her in a confessional, like, I don't think that there was some secret desire to, like, actually reveal the plan.
We actually got the opposite. Where
Yeah.
she was almost like face palming, like, I knew I shouldn't have told Sam.
Exactly.
And then I told him and he ruined it.
So, while that may have been an unintended consequence, I don't think it was intended.
Yeah, I think that people look at Soul as kind of a wash because it was a live tribal and there was 2 sides. It kind of seemed like it was building to a pivotal moment, and then ultimately when it becomes a live tribal council, everyone's like, everything was crazy. You can't really base anything off that. I think for her, everything leading up to the live tribal though is pretty much a negative. I really believe that. So let's talk Gabe, the Gabe vote. She does get back on track here. She correctly votes for Gabe. But again, like I feel like I'm starting to sound like a hater, but like I'm not sure quite how much credit.
The notes are objective facts. We're talking facts.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how much credit you can give her because she has to be convinced to make this move. It's really Caroline and Kyle being the pivotal players here. Rachel really wants Genevieve gone. And I do think Genevieve is the stronger player than Gabe. But I think if she sides with the Blues here, I think the best she can do is come in second to Caroline. I think Caroline is firmly in the driver's seat at that point. She's got Gabe through Sue. Sue's never going to leave her. Now she's got Rachel as kind of her new right-hand person. And she would have all this at the final 8, right? Essentially a very strong 4-person alliance and still operating in the shadows. I do really think that Caroline wins the season.
Mhm.
That's another thing I've noticed in this. We kind of mentioned it when Caroline got voted out, but there's like 3 or 4 things that if they don't, like if any one of the 4 things don't happen, Caroline wins the game.
Mhm.
And I think she's very underrated in all this. But so yeah, I think this is a fine round for Rachel because Gabe was threatening. A lot of people want him gone. It was probably the smart thing to do to just jump on the train. And she did make the right move, but again, she had to be talked into it.
Yeah, I mean, especially after she fucked the last one up, like,
Yeah.
like you kind of get in a position where, like, okay, if I keep trying to fuck shit up, like, I'm gonna get fucked out. So, like, you might as well just go with the plan. Because I don't know who all knew that she did that at that point, but, like, you never really know who knows what, so.
Yeah, nobody that never really came crashing down on her. I don't think
Yeah.
no one was ever like Rachel ruined that by telling Sam.
Mm. But,
Um,
yeah, I think Gabe is fine. Net
because I
neutral.
think the only people that would point the blame on her for that is like Genevieve, and she had bigger problems, like trying to avoid
Trying to avoid.
Teeny
Yeah.
finding out that that was her fault.
Mhm.
All right, Kyle. This is an obvious decision. I mean, he won 4 immunities in a row to start the post-merge. Slipped through the cracks once. And I think there was just too many people that wanted him out, though. But I will say, I think Rachel made a really great move in the background this week, which was when the quote-unquote underdog alliance, which was a 5-3 majority, but it's the underdogs. And I think Rachel had a lot to do with this, right? She was working with Caroline and Sue at this point. She was actively getting back in the mix with Andy. She's kind of circling Teeny as an ally. She basically takes all the people that she's working with and says, let's all work together. And now all of those people are keeping each other safe as a low priority, and all of their high priority is keeping Rachel safe. I think it was a great move to keep herself insulated. And it only lasts a week, but I think it's still a smart move. I think if this 5 ends up being the final 5, I do think Rachel is probably in the best position to win the game, because then you have Teeny and Andy. This is Andy's new operation, Italy, where it's, Caroline and Sue are never going to go against each other, and it would definitely be a 3v2 and one of those two going home. So, the other thing is, this is where Rachel starts winning immunities, right? Kyle getting cut out is huge because she's going to need that necklace a few times down the stretch. And with Kyle gone, she's able to win it. And obviously she's the one who beats him, right? So overall, I think this is a really good round for Rachel. And I think this is where she really starts to pick up steam.
I was just about to say that. My point was going to be that this is the turning point for Rachel's social capital, I would argue. You could probably also make the argument that because the people that she was aligned with ultimately are sitting on the jury, that helped her.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, I think Caroline being on the jury is massive for her. Mm-hmm. I really do. And speaking of Caroline, the Caroline vote out is obviously terrible for Rachel. She went from having a 5-2 majority to then losing her closest ally and that alliance dissolving. I think you can say whatever you want to say about the fact that Andy got voted out right after this. All I will say is he upset the status quo, and it was a status quo that was not going to lead to him winning the game. So that's all I'll say about Andy. And as it pertains to Rachel, this is an action that is hurtful to her game. Losing Caroline is a big blow for her. I think that had they voted out Genevieve or Sam, whichever one they chose, I think Rachel's best path was maybe to get down to 4 and then beat Caroline at fire. Or maybe you muscle Caroline out at 6, or at 5. I don't know. I think it would, but then Andy's lying in wait there, but he also hasn't played as strong of a game in this hypothetical. So if I had to guess, I think Caroline is the big hurdle to get over, and I don't know that she can do it.
I'd be less worried about Andy, I'd be more worried about Andy pulling some fuck shit before he gets to the final tribal
Right.
than him winning the game in that scenario. Because then you're left with Andy. If you muscle Caroline out, you're left with Andy and not Caroline.
Hmm.
Whereas if Andy does this, he's on everybody's radar because he's the one that took Caroline out.
Right. Yeah, I think that Andy's his best ability as a survivor player is identifying threats. I
Mm-hmm.
think he's very good at um, you know, seeing like he's good at creating a pecking order in his head. And then he kind of moves slightly to kind of like push things in the direction of that pecking order happening naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then sometimes he has to be over the top and completely force it when it's
Mm-hmm.
like when something has to happen, like Caroline going home,
Yeah.
and then that caught up with right, um, which we're led to now, Andy. So Rachel, she follows up last round, which was very bad for her with pretty much her, I would say her second signature move, which is idling Andy out. Um, and I already said it once, but this is a spot I feel like I'm really hating on Rachel because this is a great move, right? No one knows she has the idol. She's able to make it so that whoever Who and Sue vote for, that's who's going home. And I think it's so another great subtle move how she gets everyone to say why she's the best player when they're pretty much eulogizing her because it's like, oh, she's defenseless. Here we go. She's going home. Um, and then obviously keeping the secret of the idol and being able to maximize it, right? So I think the issue for me is she somehow thinks that Sam is a bigger threat than Andy. And it takes Andy making a really big mistake where he's trying to manage a juror before they're a juror. It's only when he explains why he's such a threat that she sees that he's her biggest threat,
Yeah.
right?
This
And
is a big like uh how do they not know they're in a scary movie moment
yeah,
for them where like they should be able to feel at tribal that they're doing something that's going to be edited later to look bad. Like I know you're in the moment and you're like there's no possible way for her out of this where we talked about it that week where we said why did no one anticipate this? Because
right.
from the idol count and from who they knew had and didn't have idols, like either she had it or there was one to be found and that no one was looking for.
Hmm.
So, like, I put this is Andy fucking up, and this is everyone else fucking up by being this sure. I think this like it is a good move, but I think I do fall more on the side of like the other players were dumb in this instant because like I think it is able to be determined that she could have had an idol in this scenario.
Right. Or at least that someone amongst you has one that you're not that's not being
Right. And if you're
told.
trusting them to vote with you to the extent where everyone eulogizes her at Final Tribal, then you're trusting them that they're telling you the truth. They're not going to play an idol. I mean, I
Right.
guess.
Well, I think just the way that that conversation went, they didn't expect anyone to pull one out,
Yeah.
which I think is a massive oversight by
Hmm.
everyone that's left in the game.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like Sam was on the outs the entire post merge. I don't know why she needed Andy to explain to her why he's a better player than Sam.
Hmm.
But so yeah, overall, yeah, great move for her. Andy's a guy that she really needed to get rid of. She's able to maximize the idol. It's a big play in front of the jury, but I feel like she needed help in order to make the right decision.
Here, I mean, my second big complaint about Rachel is like she like falls into the right decision,
Yes,
like through no fault of her own.
mm-hmm. I think
That's
that's
the
it's a big theme that we've
yeah.
uncovered here.
Yeah, like she is not the driver, and it's okay if you're not the driver. You can still win Survivor and be a good winner if you're not the driver. I mean, it's much more difficult, I think, to make the case that you play a good game. But like when you're just like actively just falling into the slot, that's like then it's really
Right.
hard to like make the
Yeah,
case.
it's I kind of liken it to use a little sports ball analogy here.
Mm.
Like in football, if you're say a cornerback
Hmm.
right? Running backs, he's running on that, like off the tackle or whatever, right? Onto your side. A fumble is forced by someone else, and the football, it's an oblong shape, and it
Hmm.
bounces weird, and it bounces right into your hands, and then you run it for a touchdown.
Hmm.
That's kind of Rachel, where it's like something happens through not her own doing, but she ends up with the ball in her hands and a free path to the goal line, and then she does not make a mistake.
Hmm.
And it's, how do you view that? Like there's no premeditation by her really,
Like
and
in
that's I
the
think the issue.
in the box score goes down as fumble recovery touchdown for
Yeah,
you.
that's big. That's huge for your Survivor resume. It's
Yeah.
a fumble recovery touchdown.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so Genevieve, and I think this is where like she really puts the hammer down. For as much as we're kind of dumping on her a little bit, Genevieve going, it's a great move for Rachel. I think despite Teeny being kind of all over the place, Rachel just says, "Yep, I've got immunity. I'm safe. I'm gonna vote for Genevieve. I don't care if this idol's real or not." Um, Genevieve was a target of hers for a long time. Also, Rachel wins the immunity that allows Genevieve to go.
Hmm.
Um, I have no notes for this round. I think it's a really good round for
Me
Rachel.
too. And I think it's a good time to give her flowers for winning 3 individual immunities. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And how about another one, a fourth individual
Oh,
immunity?
right. 4.
Um, and
I
a
miscounted.
Teeny going. We already kind of talked about this, but I think it's another great round for her. Right? There's no need to put yourself in fire. Um, I think I might have liked to see her, kind of say executive decision. Sue, I think you have the best odds of beating Sam. I get the like Sue's been loyal, I'm gonna be loyal back thing, but I think if you sit down and have a conversation with Sue, and you put the like if you say Sue, you're coming to the end, she will accept that. But if you sit down with her and you say, "Hey, ball's in your court. I kind of think you could beat Sam with this fire." I think Sue, based on her personality, I think Sue would be down to step up for the challenge and
Hmm.
take him on. And so I think not proposing that, um, I do have a slight issue with that, but like either way, I think she knows she's so far ahead at
Yeah.
this point, and
I don't
just
think
staying the course
it
is the
matters,
best.
to be honest. I don't
Yeah,
think it matters one or the other.
I agree. So I would call this another really good round for Rachel. Obviously, winning the immunity is big.
Hmm.
Um, so the final three. This is another thing we kind of talked about a little bit, but yeah, I don't think she has a terrible final tribal council, but I don't think she's very good. Um, I think that she played a really subtle game outside of the immunities, and I feel like she didn't really explain the subtleties well. And like she doesn't even mention that shot in the dark play that I talked about earlier,
Right.
and she doesn't articulate why it's important to bring that specific 5 together at the final 8 when Kyle goes. And I feel like if you play a subtle game and you don't explain it well, you usually don't win.
Hmm.
And she was against Sue, who, not to be disrespectful, but she didn't really play the game that much. She was kind of a passenger in a lot of things. Um, and her other opponent was Sam, who was on the bottom forever, right? So I think, there was a little bit of conservative play, I would say, maybe,
Hmm.
by her, knowing that she really just needed to not mess up because look who she was surrounded by, right?
Hmm.
So I think really once Genevieve went, it was really just get to the end, and there's no argument that the rest of these people can even make. So I think overall, I think she's a below average winner. I think I kind of am holding true to the opinion that I had coming in. And part of the reason why I had that opinion coming in was, I had casual thoughts about a lot of what we just talked about
Hmm.
before I made that point.
Hmm.
I think if I just run down a quick summary, the pros, I think John, she got the numbers right away. The Tiana vote, getting the advantage from Saul and trying to turn it into Alliance, I think that's a good thing. The Sierra vote, gaining important information with the shot in the dark, I think is important. Getting rid of Kyle, that allowed her to win immunities. She also really set up her social network, or I think it was brought to the forefront in that moment. Um, the Andy vote, maximizing the idol. I think also just giving her credit for finding an idol in the first place. I think that's big. Um, Genevieve, She got her biggest rival out of the game. Teeny vote. I think she did everything right at Final Tribal. Immunities. In the last 5 tribal councils, she's safe via a challenge win 4 times. The 5th time, she plays an idol to save herself. And I do think to defend her a little bit there, because we don't love just immunitying your way to the end. I don't know that she really needed all of the immunities. I think she needed. I think the final 7 would have been interesting if she was able to be voted for. I wonder if they would have got her out instead of Caroline. I still think they wanted to break up Caroline and Sue. I still think Caroline probably goes there. And I think the fact that Genevieve's in the game until the final 5, I don't think she really needed any of the immunities. The one that she did need was the one where she plays the idol, which she didn't even win. So, and yeah, I think her biggest pro is the social game, and kind of what I talked about earlier is just that talking to her, it's just you get a vibe that she's a formidable player, and I think that's why she was targeted early in the merge, even before she really had any power. And I think that's why when she's able to make it to the end, people remember what they thought of Rachel being in the game with her, and seemed like she didn't really make any mistakes, and that's reason enough to vote for somebody. The cons, though. The Annika vote. The entire tribe dynamic flipped without her knowing. I think that's a big con. Also with the Tiana vote, like we said, getting saved by the advantage, but this is, there's definitely 2 sides to that. The Gabe vote, I think being needed to be convinced that Gabe needs to go, when I think him staying is a pretty negative thing for her game. Soul, I think incorrectly trying to vote out a guy that you just formed an alliance with doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And like I said, there might be a reasoning where, she gets really close with Caroline around this point, but still, it's hard for me to understand. Caroline, obviously, her whole game got dumped on its head when that happened. And then Andy, I think Andy needing to out himself as a huge threat for her to even realize that he's a threatening player. Like, she's talking about him like he's a 0 vote finalist until he has this conversation with her. And I get that her saying, you were convincing, just not in the way you thought. Like, it's a nice, like, exclamation point, or like really just like slam the door on it. It's a great quote in front of the jury, but let's be real. Why did he need to be convincing? There's no reason why he should have needed to be. It's obvious. Sam didn't do anything the entire game. So yeah, I think it's too many cons for her to be a great winner.
Yeah.
I think it's too many for her to even be a good winner. I thought you put it really well at some point when we, were talking in there, that I just think it's a lot of times she just fell into a good situation and then didn't mess it up. And I think the lack of premeditation and planning in her game, that's the thing I have an issue with, is there was a lack of control, I thought.
Yeah, she never had a grip on what was happening. She never manipulated anything.
Yeah. She reminds me a lot of Erica winning 41. Where
I would agree.
She didn't really have control, but nobody did. And she had like just enough to have a resume, and she was more likable than the other 2.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that's a good comp.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so there's Rachel. She's into the Pantheon, though. She is a winner.
I'm looking at the trivia for her on Survivor Wiki. I didn't know she was an alternate for Survivor 46.
Yeah, I did hear that after.
Hypothetically, where do you think she would have placed in Survivor 46? Purely hypothetically.
For as much as I said she's like Erica, I think there's a tier in the New Era winner rankings that's her, Erica, and Kenzie. I think they're all very similar players. I think it really depends which tribe she's on, because
I'm just looking at it like, if we're being honest, Charlie or Maria should have won that season.
Charlie should have won the season.
Yeah. Well, you can flip them, I guess.
Right, but I think the fact that Maria got by Charlie, I would just say that Charlie should have won.
Yeah, Charlie.
I'm anti Maria.
Yeah.
as we
Oh,
know.
well, me too. Yeah, on the record, anti Maria. Charlie should have won that season. If that vote was reversed, then Maria should have won, is what I would say.
Sure.
Yeah. I just think that like they were. I feel like that cast as a whole was a lot stronger at sussing this type of game out, which is weird to say because Kenzie plays a similar game, but
Yeah,
like I said, Charlie should have won this season. So
right.
Kenzie
But
should have
because of the
lost.
cast, he doesn't.
I get that's a fair point,
There you go.
but only
I actually
because
think Rachel
only,
would have did really good. in
like
this.
only because Charlie specifically scorned Marie. Like it was very like
Yeah.
if they play it again, Charlie like I don't know if it goes down the same way. I mean, if you play any season again, like who's to say? But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I actually think Rachel would have done pretty well because I think there was a lot of very obvious threats like the hunters of the world.
Mhm.
And I also think there was a lot of big personalities like Venus, I mean Q,
I think Q would have
Liz.
frazzled Rachel.
Yeah. And yeah, I think there's a lot of places to hide amongst that cast.
That's
And
true.
I think I bet I think if she survives the pre-merge, which I don't think there's a reason that she wouldn't. I think if she makes the merge, I'd say she makes the finale more often than she doesn't. If I'm being
You want to
honest.
know a hot take?
Hmm.
This might be hot. I think she plays a better game but loses. Would be my take.
I don't know if that's scolding hot. Like, okay, so if we're saying her and Kenzie are very similar,
Mm-hmm.
let's say she trades places with Kenzie.
Okay.
I do think that she would like what Kenzie does to Hunter. I picture Rachel doing the
Mhm.
same thing. Like I think they're very similar skill sets.
Are you talking yourself into ranking Kenzie underneath Rachel in the winner rankings right now?
I'll tell you right now, I made a list and Kenzie's above her. So by one spot.
I might
I
be
have-
convincing you to flip flop them.
No. I saw people comparing Rachel to D,
Mm-hmm.
and I have the only note I have for anybody in these rankings is I have D and then it says not even close. Because it fucking is not
Yeah.
even close.
In what world are they comparable? Comparable.
D has like I mean there's so many winners now that it's hard to be like, oh, top 10 for sure. Like D is a lock top 15 winner for sure. And then I think if you really look at the game, she's probably fringe top 10, I would say. And then I had Jam Jam 2 because I think he had a level of like a subtle control, but it was never like D's. It was like Iron Fist. Like she had that game
Yes.
start to finish of the merge. Jam Jam, his group came in with a low amount of numbers, and they were able to navigate well. He played a really good underdog game, I would say. And then I had Marianne 3, which I think Marianne is the Kenzie, Rachel, Erica tier, but with some pop. She had
Yeah.
some big moves, and she had some higher level of thinking.
And
in my
she
opinion.
was, I think, had a better social game than any of them.
I would say, it's been a while since I saw 41. I would maybe say Kenzie has the best social game of that group.
Yeah, that's potentially maybe Marianne more well-roundedly liked by the cast, which is different than social game, I suppose.
Marianne's just a different kind of cat because she has a more like her personality. She wears her heart on her sleeve more. I would say
Je ne sais quoi.
yeah, it's a lot more out there than some of the others, right? But
Yeah.
and then I had 4, 5, 6. I have Kenzie, Rachel, Erica. I think they're all really close, and then I think it's a wide gap to Gabler at 7. Because I think that saying like Kenzie, Rachel, Erica, 4, 5, 6 of the new era, there's a lot of people that are going to be like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" To at least one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm being honest, I think that 2 through 6, I think they're all pretty close.
Yeah, I agree. This is
I think the interesting thing is to say take those 5 and rank them as players. And in that case, I think it's a lot tougher, and I think you can scramble it a lot,
Mhm.
which is I think speaks to my point.
Yeah, you're right. I guess they're pretty close. I just thought that'd be an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah. Um, the one last thing I want to talk about is I have a theory on the new winner edit, and this is something I've
Okay.
mentioned before, um, but I don't think I had a big spiel for it before. Um, there is definitely like next to go on their tribe before the merge. Like, so if there's three tribes, right? I feel like before they go to the mats and merge or do whatever, get on the boats, whatever, they will do like a this person's in the most danger in this tribe. People are getting trying to get them. This person and this person. One of those three wins the game. I think going back to 39, this is true. Where in 39, Tommy, where they pretty much have the they 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 switch to a an 8-person tribe, and it's 4-4, but Jason gets his vote blocked, and then Jason is the one to go home, and Tommy is so clearly the next target.
Mm-hmm.
But they win an immunity challenge, and then it's the merge, and he's saved. Winners of War, Tony. This is the one that I was. This is actually where I started to pick up on it, which is only the second season into it, but they really hammer home that if Tony's tribe doesn't win this next immunity, he's going home, or like, so I think yeah, there's definitely evidence there. Erica, the tribe is considering throwing the challenge to get rid of her at one point, and they never go to a tribal council, and I think they make it pretty clear that her and Heather are on the outs, and she would go 4-2. Although I've heard people argue that Sydney would go first. I really don't know how much I believe that. And then you have Marianne. I think that her getting so close with Omer over the course of the pre-merge, I think makes people forget that it was her, Omer, Jonathan, and Lindsay, and people were not getting rid of Jonathan. He was just too good in the challenges. And Lindsay, I feel like her and Jonathan had a really slow burning falling out, but they were still kind of together, and Omer was kind of in that crew. Like, Marianne was definitely the next to go in that group. I think Gabler's next. If his tribe wasn't such a train wreck, he's the first boot. I mean, he's lucky to have even made the merge, in my opinion. The one that you could kind of argue with this is Jam Jam.
Jam Jam.
I think Caroline probably falls more in this camp, but Jam Jam also did have a big edit in that episode where they're going to tribal council. It's going to be one of the three of them, and then they're saved by a medical evacuation, and they don't have to vote anybody out. So in that case, maybe it's the greatest example of this. And I don't want to rehash, but does Carson vote out Jam Jam or Caroline? That's a great debate, because I think if you just look at the end of the game, I think Caroline was definitely the better ally to him.
It's Carolyn, right?
Or yeah, Carolyn, not Caroline. Sorry,
You're good.
I'm
Caroline's
used to saying Caroline now.
Yeah. You're gonna get hate.
Yeah. And I might watch The Traitors just for Caroline.
Oh, does that come out tonight? I'm so hyped.
Yeah, it's tonight.
We're watching it. I can't wait for Alyssa to be home in 2 minutes.
But yeah, just to finish this real quick. D is an anomaly. I like this. Her tribe. I mean, they were getting whittled down, and her and Austin hadn't really done the little showman's thing yet.
Yeah, man, it's good.
I was just gonna say, I think Austin and Drew were definitely sticking together, and like they like J Maya and Sifu, like it was. This is just an outlier, I think, but yeah, Kenzie, Tiffany was essentially deciding between Q and Kenzie at the end, and they really were putting the onus on, like Kenzie's dangerous. It might make sense to get rid of Kenzie. They were even doing that with 4 people left on the tribe. And then yeah, Rachel this time. I mean, she's on the bottom. She got a big edit right before they go to the merge.
It's just well over 50%, which is
Right.
statistically significant.
Yeah, I think D is the clear miss. Jam Jam, you could kind of argue, but yeah,
This is
I
a
think,
tangent. I'm looking at the winner list on Wikipedia, but of the new winners, would you like to guess who has their own Wikipedia article? There's one.
it's fucking Gabler, isn't it?
It's Marianne.
Really?
Yeah.
That
And
wouldn't have even been my next guess.
there is nothing on it besides her Survivor recap, which is strange that she would have her own Wikipedia article for it, because the other players that have their own Wikipedia articles have participated in multiple seasons or other reality competition TV shows.
Yeah.
Tony,
I thought maybe Gabler because of the didn't he donate a good chunk of his winnings or something?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know.
I don't
You could be
remember.
right. I didn't hear that, but
And then my other guess was going to be D because she hosted that podcast with Jeff.
right. Tony, Natalie Anderson, Michelle, Nick Wilson, Mike White, obviously Mike White,
Mm-hmm.
Ben, Sarah Lucina, Troy Zan.
Troy Zen having a Wikipedia is great. He didn't do fucking dick besides be on Survivor. You know why he has a page is because of he was in the second chance voting. Probably is why.
I think it's people who played more than one season. Also,
Yeah, that's true too. All right. Yeah,
Also, he has 12 monkeys that he adopted.
that fits so perfectly.
He said Robertson resides in South Florida on 10 acres of Miami jungle, in quotes, along with 12 marmoset monkeys he adopted.
There you go. Also, that's one of the greatest cucks in the history of Survivor is him showing up to Survivor One World and being like, I'm the crazy guy named Troy. I'm going to call myself Troy Zan. And there's some fucking old dude who's like, I'm going by Tarzan. And it's like, what the fuck, man? What do you mean?
Tarzan and Troy Zan.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's gonna do it for Survivor 47. I don't have anything on Survivor 48. Every time they show a preview, there's never any information. So
I say this every season, but when they cut the promo for it at the end of the finale, they just look like off-brand to me.
yeah. It's like, oh, did somebody decide to go to a beach and film their own fan Survivor season?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's the Aldi of Survivor.
Then they're going into the ether the next year. So,
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all we had, unless you got anything else.
No?
All right. Well, let's hope Penn State loses tonight. And
Rooting for it.
yeah, thank you everybody for listening to the entire season, and we will see you all next time.